performance of a contract. Why that is important? When we said we are making promises, it has to be performed, isn't it? Either you have to perform or you have to abstain from performance. So what is performance? What is the basic tenet of performance? Both have to perform or both have to not perform. So what is that performance? What is the basis for all this? It has to be performed by both the parties. Then one party can demand performance from the other, right? So that is the thing that you need to understand. So who should perform? By whom the contract should be performed? It is a necessary part of any contract, correct? Every person who has promised should perform, or a state will have to perform. So suppose I have promised to perform in terms of I have promised to sell my property to you and I die. Then does that mean that that promise goes with me? No, my estate still has to perform the contract. So either the person or his estate, sometimes it is sufficient if the promisor performs his side of the contract, the other person may not perform because they are just on the receiving end. So that is also possible. Now, who else should perform the contract? By whom contract may be performed? It could be by the agent. My agent can perform on my behalf, correct? Or my representative can perform on my behalf, like in case of a company. A company cannot walk and talk on its own, being a legal juridical person. Therefore, it is represented by people who can walk and talk on their behalf, which is your director, isn't it? Then you have a third person. I may say that instead of me performing, XYZ person will perform on my behalf. Perfectly acceptable provided you accept it. Also, if there are two promisers, if I and my partner have promised to perform jointly, both of us should perform the contract, either individually or jointly as the case may be. And if the performance is rejected, suppose I am willing to perform, I am doing this work, but the promisor, that is me, I am discharged from further liability if this performance is rejected. And I can even sue for breach of contract if I so wish. So this is called discharge by tender. That means I have attempted my performance. You are rejecting it for no good reason, and therefore I can charge you. I can sue for breach of contract. So what is the distinction between succession and assignment? Succession means what? Somebody dies and everything related to them goes to the other person who is succeeding to that estate. Then the benefits of the contract are succeeded by process of law. You are succeeding to assets as well as liabilities. Now this is a common problem which people face. Assignment means they are assigning only assets. You can't assign liabilities. That is the essential point of difference between succession and assignment. What is the effect of refusal to accept offer of performance, which I just told you? What is the condition for that? Offer should be unconditional. It should be made at the proper time and place. If the offer is to deliver something, promisee must get reasonable opportunity to check. So suppose I have offered to deliver let's say paracetamol powder to the manufacturer of Crocin, and I am offering to deliver it. I have delivered it. I say it's in bags and you have to accept based on whatever we have discussed. But the promisee, that is the person who is receiving it, should get a reasonable opportunity to check whether what he has got is what he had ordered for, isn't it? That is what we are saying over here. Effect of a refusal of a party to perform a promise. Entire promise must be performed. Correct? And the promisee may put an end to the contract at any point in time. That means this person who is a singer, let's say, okay, he is contracted with Y. X is a singer who is contracting with Y to sing for 6 nights. That is Y is the person who is arranging this whole concert. On the 6th night he doesn't turn up, Y can obviously put an end to the contract. What about devolution of joint liability? Suppose there are joint promisers. Then what? I told you, each of them is liable individually as well as jointly. So both of them have to be performing or giving the consideration. Both of them jointly as well as individually is liable. What about devolution of joint rights? Same, 2 or more promisees. that each of them is entitled to demand performance, provided each of them have jointly got the right. That is, both of them are together are the promisees. So X promises to pay Y and Z jointly, then both of them have got the right to demand performance. Assignee can also demand performance provided instrument of assignment is in writing. That we have seen. What is the time and place for performance of promise? Where no time is specified, within reasonable time you have to perform. If specific time is specified, specific date is mentioned but no time is mentioned, then on that day during business hours you have to perform. Where no place is fixed, then it is a duty of the promiser to ask the promisee to fix a reasonable place. Otherwise it is in the usual place of business. So this is just common sense. This way anyway do it, we know it, and we just have to continue to do it. Now we come to performance of reciprocal promise. I have promised to do something, you are promising to do something, right? As a general observation, you must understand that contract may consist of an act and a promise or two promises. I also promise and you also promise. What am I promising? I am promising to purchase your car at a particular rate. So, I am promising to pay. What are you promising to do? You are promising to sell your car to me. So, you are promising to deliver the car to me as a sale. So, if B wishes to pay after a month, let's say in my case, I wish to pay after a month, it is not a reciprocal promise. It is just something which is part of the promise, right? So, it can take different forms. A reciprocal promise is, I promise to do something, you promise to do something, this is reciprocal. Now, if I say that I will pay after a month, that is not reciprocal. That is a conditional promise. Correct? Now, it can take different forms. One is simultaneous performance is reciprocal promise. Performance of a reciprocal promise is where the order is expressly fixed. Unless the condition has been fixed at the time of the promise itself, you cannot specify that it is a reciprocal promise. And then, by implication of that contract, it becomes a reciprocal promise. And effect of one party preventing the other from performing the promise is voidable. So suppose I am telling you that I will pay, but I am preventing you from giving the car to me, which is very foolish. I prevent you from performing your promise, then it is a voidable contract. Effects of default as to promise to be performed first. One of them cannot be performed, or its performance cannot be demanded till the other has been performed. It's a very simple case where one of them cannot be performed. Let's say I am a singer or I am a teacher in this case, right? I have got an illness, let's say for my throat, where the doctor says from now on you cannot speak. I cannot perform. That's it. Or a scenario where one performance cannot be demanded till the other has been performed. I cannot demand that you give me the car till I make the payment, correct? So this scenario where there is a default, then what happens? So one performance has to be performed first, then only the other can be performed, correct? And what is the position of legal and illegal parts of reciprocal promises? Always the illegal part is void. Remember this, always. It's a ballpark point. It need not be referred to again. Any promise which is illegal, any part of the promise which is illegal will become void. What is the effect of a failure to perform at a time fixed in the contract when time is essential? Suppose it's a contract which is of perishable goods. I promise to deliver, let's say 10 kilos of tomatoes to you on XYZ date. Let's say 10th of January I promise to give you. Here the time is essential, because if I don't give it to you on that time, it is of no use to you. Because you are a caterer for a wedding. I have promised to deliver 10 kgs of tomatoes to you for that. And you need it on that particular day. Isn't it clear? And if I don't deliver at that time, it is voidable. If agreed by promise, no compensation. Normally in a scenario like this, I'll demand compensation, right? You will demand compensation. I was supposed to deliver. You didn't deliver. I had to pay phenomenal amount. So you will demand compensation. But in a contract, it may be written that you will not get any compensation. In which case, you will not get. So it all depends on the terms of the contract. Remember this as a main point in contract. Whatever you write becomes your final thing. There's no such thing as this was assumed. Everything has to be brought down to writing. That is why Contract Act is so important. If time is essence of the contract, then only this question arises. How to determine? Depends on the terms of the contract. So everything boils down to how you have drawn up that contract. Now, there could be a discharge by impossibility or frustration. That means it is something which is clearly impossible to do. It is possible that it is something which is going to become impossible at a later point in time. Like I said, the singer who's contracted to sing for a concert and he becomes sick. What can you do? It can happen that the contract will become void in such a case. Or it becomes something which is going to become impossible at a later point in time, subsequent impossibility. Like a case where I put down here, where A contracts to sell land to B and he takes the deposit, but then war breaks out. And in that war, the government requisitions the land. This is a discharge by supervening impossibility, where it becomes impossible to discharge the contract because either subject matter of the contract is destroyed. That is, something has happened to that subject matter of the contract. Let's say I have entered into a contract with you saying that my ship is on the way containing all the goods, right? And I have said as soon as the good lands here, I am selling it to you. You have agreed. Now in such a scenario, let's assume at the time of making the contract, everything was fine. The contract was made properly. It is a valid contract, right? But what happened is the ship sank. Ship sank subsequently. What happens in this case? Subject matter of the contract is destroyed. It is a subsequent impossibility, or it is dependent on the basis of continued existence of the ship. What can you do? The contract is void. It could be that it depends on the personal qualification of party and the party is dead. Take my case. I am here. I am teaching you. What is the contract basis? I will teach this particular subject, isn't it? And then it is found that I am dead or I have lost my mind. Can I be held responsible? Can I be held to my contract? Obviously not. So it becomes a discharge by supervening impossibility or subsequent impossibility because the person who is supposed to do the contract is no more. What can you do? The contract goes, right? What about discharge by supervening illegality? Contrary to law at the time of formation is void. That we have seen. It is illegal because of alteration of law then. So a case where reclamation of land has been done and you're going to build your building over there, right? CRZ norms are there, no? Coastal Regulation Zone norms. Now that norms have been changed subsequently and it is found that area where you were supposed to build your building, you are no longer allowed to build. What can you do? It has become illegal at a later point in time. Illegal because there is a change in law. Or cutting of trees is prohibited subsequently in your area. It is a change in law. So what are the cases where there is no supervening impossibility? The difficulty of performance is it becomes more expensive than estimated, and that is why you are giving up. So let's take my own case. I have entered into a contract to teach this particular subject, right? Now I am supposed to perform, but I find that the amount which was quoted is not proper. I feel now it is very expensive. It's much more expensive than estimated. And I say I can't do it because it has become subsequently impossible to perform. Will it be allowed? It will not be allowed. Contract is still valid. I can still be sued for specific performance. Second, this is commercial impossibility, financially not viable. One is difficulty of performance because it is more expensive. Second is commercial impossibility because it's financially not viable for a company to sell the goods at that particular rate. So take the case of a builder. When he books a flat, when he takes the bookings for flat, he has charged, let's say, 3,400 per square foot. And then he finds that after some time, when actually the construction of the building is on, he finds that the cement cost has gone up, the steel cost has gone up. He is not able to even breach the cost at the rate at which he has booked. It has become financially not viable. Will it be allowed? No. He should have estimated it, is the basic point that we are trying to underline, that we are trying to say. Strikes, lockouts, civil disturbances like riots do not terminate contracts. So take a company, take Maruti company, right? This company has got so many contracts to deliver so many cars to so many people, right? Now subsequently a riot occurred in the company or a strike occurred in the company, which has happened, right? You must have read in the papers. So what happens in this case? Does it terminate the contract? No. They may at best ask for some more time to perform. Therefore, supervening impossibility is not acceptable in these three cases. In English law, it is called frustration, but we will not delve into that too much. Now you think about how do you appropriate payments. That is, where debt to be discharged is indicated. A very simple case. I am a businesswoman, you are a businessman, I am dealing with you regularly. I have got several debts. That means I have run lots of debts with you. I am supposed to pay you so many things which I am supposed to pay, right? There are so many contracts with you. And I am supposed to pay on each contract. There is 1 lakh owed on one contract, 5 lakhs owed on another contract, whatever. Today I have paid you some money. I have paid you 2 lakhs. How will you apply this payment to which date? If I have specified which date, then you have to apply as per that. Otherwise, you can apply it as per your discretion, even if Limitation Act applies. Limitation Act applies, right? Beyond 3 years, it is discharged. But you can still apply on an old debt also if I don't specify. Now, suppose I don't specify and you also don't specify, you can appropriate as per the order of time. Oldest debt first, then next, etc. Suppose there are 3 debts on the same day, 1 lakh, 5 lakh, 4 lakh, and I am giving you 2 lakh, then which will you appropriate it against? Any. Or you can appropriate, if it is on the same date, you will appropriate it proportionately. That is what the rule says. There are certain contracts which need not be performed. Like what? Like novasion. A new contract is created instead of old. Suppose I have changed the terms and conditions of a contract. I want it changed for some reason and you also agree, okay, it's time to change the terms and conditions. Old contract goes, new contract comes in, right? So the old contract need not be performed. What is the second scenario? You're withdrawing from the contract. We talked about voidable contract, remember? Where the one party withdraws. So in which case the contract need not be performed. This is technically called rescinding of a contract or rescission. Third is alteration. Where the terms and conditions have been altered, it is treated like a new contract instead of a old. What is the fourth one? Remission. Where you settle for a lower amount. Where you are a creditor, I owe you 2 lakh of rupees and you say, okay, you are not paying me at all, you are useless, you are keeping on delay. So instead of 2 lakh, you can pay me 1,50,000 and get done. So this is called remission. You are settling for a lower sum. Settlement is a very normal occurrence in finance world, right? And the last one is waiver, where I deliberately tell you, okay, I don't want you to perform. You just keep whatever I have given you. I am giving up my right to your performance. That is a case where you need not perform. This is called a waiver. Now, what happens in a voidable contract? One party need not perform, right? Because the other party has rescinded or withdrawn from the contract. So, the other party need not perform, but any benefit that a person has received has to be given back to the original person. This we have discussed. What is the obligation of a person who has received advantage under void agreement or one becoming void? They have to restore the advantage back to the person and they have to also pay compensation or damages. We are now going to step into discharge of a contract. Discharge of a contract is when rights or obligations are terminated or extinguished. What is the mode of discharge? One is by performance. Second is mutual consent or agreement. That is, one is you discharge a contract because you finish doing the contract. Second is between the two of us we agree we don't want to do this contract anymore. Enough. I don't want to see your face anymore. So that can happen. and that by mutual consent we agree not to perform the contract. Third is lapse of time. The time to discharge has gone. Therefore, it is discharged. Fourth is operation of law, where the law says you cannot perform. Therefore, by operation of law, it is discharged. Fifth is impossibility of performance, which we just saw. And sixth is breach of contract, which we will see in the next unit.